Imagine waking up one morning, checking your investment account, and realizing that every single dollar you've spent decades saving is gone. Not because the stock market crashed, not because of a recession, but because the money was never really there. Thousands of families lived through that exact nightmare. Retirees lost their life savings. Charities shut down overnight. Millionaires became bankrupt. Some victims had trusted one man for over 30 years. A man who wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wasn't an anonymous hacker. He wasn't a mysterious criminal living on a private island. He was one of the most respected names on Wall Street. He advised major banks. He served as the chairman of NASDAQ. He appeared successful, confident, trustworthy, and for decades, almost nobody questioned him. His name was Bernie Madoff, and he pulled off what is widely considered the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, a fraud worth nearly $65 billion. The shocking part? He didn't use advanced technology. He didn't hack bank accounts. He didn't invent a revolutionary investment strategy. Instead, he relied on something far more powerful: human psychology. Welcome to Jackson Invest, where we uncover the biggest stories in business, investing, and money through documentary-style storytelling. If you enjoy learning how the financial world really works, subscribe now, because every video is designed to help you understand money beyond the headlines. Now here's the question that confused investigators for years. How can someone steal billions of dollars while standing in the middle of Wall Street without anyone stopping him? The answer begins with one simple idea: trust. People trusted Bernie Madoff because everyone else trusted Bernie Madoff. Banks trusted him. Celebrities trusted him. Wealthy families trusted him. Charities trusted him. Even experienced investors believed their money was safe. When everyone around you believes something, your brain naturally assumes it must be true. And Bernie understood that better than almost anyone. He knew people weren't investing because they understood his strategy. They were investing because they believed someone else had already done the research. That single psychological shortcut would become the foundation of one of the greatest financial frauds ever created. But here's the strange part: Bernie Madoff didn't start his career as a criminal. In fact, he built a reputation as one of the smartest and most respected people in American finance. So, how did a trusted Wall Street legend become history's biggest fraudster? That's where the story really begins. To understand how Bernie Madoff fooled the world, we first need to go back to the beginning. Long before newspapers called him a criminal, he was known as a financial genius. In 1960, Bernie founded a small investment firm in New York. He wasn't born into a billionaire family. He didn't inherit a financial empire. Like many entrepreneurs, he started small. Over the years, his company grew rapidly. As technology transformed Wall Street, Madoff became one of the pioneers of electronic trading. His reputation skyrocketed. He wasn't just another investor anymore. He became one of the most influential figures in American finance. At one point, he even served as the chairman of NASDAQ, one of the world's largest stock exchanges. Think about that for a second. The man who would later become the face of the biggest investment fraud in history was once trusted to help lead one of America's most important financial institutions. That level of credibility made people stop asking questions, because when someone has an impressive title, an expensive office, and decades of success, our brains automatically assume they're trustworthy. Psychologists call this the authority bias. We naturally trust people who appear successful. Bernie Madoff understood that perfectly. He didn't promise impossible returns. In fact, his returns looked surprisingly ordinary, around 10 to 12% every year. Steady, consistent, never too high, never too low. Ironically, that made his story even more believable. While other investors experienced huge ups and downs, Madoff's clients seemed to make money almost every single year. People thought they had found the perfect investor. Soon, wealthy families began recommending him to their friends. Celebrities wanted in. Professional athletes invested. Charities trusted him with their endowments. Banks introduced wealthy clients to him. One satisfied investor brought another, then another, then another. Before long, billions of dollars were flowing into Madoff's firm, and almost nobody knew what he was actually doing with the money. Very few clients asked detailed questions. Most didn't even understand his investment strategy. They simply believed one thing: if everyone this wealthy trusts him, why shouldn't I? That single question allowed the scheme to grow for decades. But behind the scenes, there was one terrifying secret. Bernie Madoff wasn't making incredible investments. In fact, He wasn't investing most of the money at all, and when investigators finally discovered what was really happening, Wall Street would never look the same again. So, if Bernie Madoff wasn't actually investing the money, where was it going? The answer is surprisingly simple. He was using new investors' money to pay old investors. Imagine this. You invest $100,000 with Bernie. A few months later, he tells you your investment has grown to $110,000. You feel happy. You trust him even more. Then your friend decides to invest $100,000 too. Instead of investing your friend's money in the stock market, Bernie quietly uses part of it to pay you. Now you believe his strategy works, so you tell another friend. Your friend tells another friend, and the cycle continues. This is the heart of a Ponzi scheme. There's no magical investment, no secret trading strategy. The business survives only because new money keeps coming in. As long as more people invest then withdraw, everything appears normal. Clients receive statements showing steady profits. Their account balances continue to grow. Everyone believes they're getting richer, but those numbers exist only on paper. The money simply isn't there. Think of it like building a house of cards. At first, it looks stable. Each new investor adds another card, making the structure appear even stronger. But underneath, the entire system depends on one fragile assumption, that new investors will never stop arriving. And that's exactly what made Madoff's scheme so dangerous. It wasn't just stealing money, it was creating an illusion so convincing that banks, charities, hedge funds, and experienced financial professionals all believed it. Even more shocking, some experts actually warned regulators years before the collapse. One financial analyst repeatedly argued that Madoff's returns were mathematically impossible. No legitimate strategy could produce such consistent profits year after year without experiencing major losses. But almost nobody listened. Why? Because when everyone believes a success story, the person raising questions often gets ignored. It's a powerful psychological effect known as social proof. If thousands of successful people believe something, our brains assume it must be true. Bernie Madoff didn't just exploit money, he exploited trust, and for nearly 2 decades, that trust made him untouchable. But every Ponzi scheme has one fatal weakness. The moment too many people ask for their money back, the illusion collapses. The year was 2008. The world was already facing one of the worst financial crises in modern history. Banks were collapsing. Stock markets were crashing. People were terrified. And when people become afraid, they want one thing: their money. Thousands of Bernie Madoff's clients suddenly began requesting withdrawals. Some needed cash to survive the recession. Others simply wanted to move their investments somewhere safer. Normally, an investment company would sell some assets and return the money. But Bernie had a problem. There were no assets, because most of the money had never been invested. It had already been used to pay earlier investors. Within weeks, the requests reached billions of dollars. For the first time in decades, the machine stopped working. The house of cards had finally run out of cards. Behind closed doors, Bernie Madoff realized there was no escape. On December 10th, 2008, he called his 2 sons into his apartment. They expected an ordinary family meeting. Instead, their father looked at them and quietly said something that would change their lives forever. It's all one big lie. He admitted that his investment business wasn't making money. It wasn't even investing most of the funds. It was simply a massive Ponzi scheme. His sons were stunned. They had spent years believing their father was one of Wall Street's greatest investors. The very next morning, they reported him to federal authorities. Within hours, FBI agents arrived at Bernie's apartment. He didn't run. He didn't deny it. When an FBI agent asked if there was any innocent explanation, Bernie reportedly answered with one simple word: no. Just like that, the biggest investment fraud in history came to an end. The financial world was in complete shock. How could someone fool banks, charities, hedge funds, financial experts, and regulators for nearly 2 decades? The answer wasn't because Bernie was a genius criminal. It was because almost everyone stopped asking questions. People trusted reputation more than evidence. And that mistake would cost thousands of families everything they had. But the financial losses were only part of the tragedy, because when the truth finally came out, the human cost was even more heartbreaking. The collapse of Bernie Madoff's empire didn't just destroy bank accounts. It destroyed lives. More than 37,000 investors across over 130 countries were affected in one way or another. Some lost a portion of their savings. Others lost absolutely everything. Retired couples who had spent 40 years building their nest egg suddenly found themselves starting over. Charities that depended on investment income were forced to shut down. Scholarship programs disappeared. Medical foundations closed their doors. Families who believed they were financially secure woke up with nothing. For many victims, the pain wasn't just financial, it was emotional. Imagine spending your entire life saving for retirement, only to discover those numbers on your account statement never actually existed. Some investors had trusted Bernie Madoff for 20 or even 30 years. Every monthly statement showed steady growth. Every report suggested their future was secure. But it was all an illusion. The psychological impact was devastating. People didn't just lose money, they lost confidence. They lost trust. They questioned every financial institution they had once believed in. Governments and regulators also faced intense criticism. Many people asked the same question: how did nobody stop this sooner? The truth is, there were warning signs. Independent analysts had questioned Madoff's unusually consistent returns years before the collapse. Some even submitted detailed reports explaining why his numbers didn't make mathematical sense. But those warnings were largely ignored, sometimes because of bureaucracy, sometimes because of overconfidence, and sometimes because people simply couldn't believe someone so respected could be running a fraud. That's one of the biggest lessons in finance. Never confuse reputation with transparency. A famous name, a luxurious office, or a successful image doesn't replace evidence. If someone can't clearly explain how your money is being invested, that's not a small concern. It's a warning. And perhaps the biggest lesson of all is this: if an investment seems to deliver smooth, predictable profits, regardless of what the market is doing, you should ask why. Because in the real world, every legitimate investment carries risk. No strategy wins all the time. No investor is perfect. The moment someone appears to have found a way to eliminate risk completely, it's time to become more curious, not more comfortable. And that lesson is just as important today as it was in 2008. Because while Bernie Madoff's scheme ended, when Bernie Madoff was arrested in December 2008, an era of blind trust on Wall Street came to an end. In 2009, he pleaded guilty to 11 federal crimes, including securities fraud, investment advisor fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, perjury, and theft. The court sentenced him to 150 years in prison, the maximum sentence possible. It wasn't just a punishment for one man, it was a warning to the entire financial industry. Investigators spent years trying to recover the missing money. Billions of dollars were eventually returned to victims through lawsuits and asset recoveries. But for many families, the damage could never truly be repaired. Years of stress, broken dreams, lost retirements, those things couldn't simply be refunded. Bernie Madoff died in prison in 2021, but his story is still taught in universities, business schools, and finance courses around the world. Not because people admire what he did, but because his fraud revealed something important about human nature. People don't lose money only because criminals exist. They lose money because trust is easier than verification. We naturally believe people with impressive titles, beautiful offices, luxury lifestyles, perfect track records. But successful investing isn't built on trust alone. It's built on understanding, asking questions, doing your own research, and remembering one simple rule. If you don't understand how an investment makes money, you probably shouldn't invest in it. That's why every great investor focuses on one thing before anything else. Not profits, not excitement, not hype, understanding. Because knowledge is the first investment that never loses value. So the next time someone promises guaranteed returns, claims they've discovered a secret strategy, or tells you an investment is completely risk-free, pause, ask questions. Demand evidence, because history has already shown us what can happen when nobody does. If you enjoyed this documentary, hit the like button and subscribe to Jackson Invest. Every week, we uncover the biggest stories in finance, business, investing, and the psychology behind money, one documentary at a time. And in our next episode, we're diving into one of the most powerful companies on Earth, a company that manages trillions of dollars, quietly influences global markets, and is often described as the firm that owns everything. The story of BlackRock. Trust me, after watching that documentary, you'll never look at the financial world the same way again.